The other interesting phenomenon that's been discovered by sociolinguists is near mergers. So if we just think about mergers, there's a pretty simple test that we can normally use to determine whether a merger has happened or not, and that is just ask somebody if there's a minimal pair. And so for cot versus cot, right, a well-known merger in English, if a speaker has a contrast between cot and caught, then they will say, yeah, in my pronunciation, those two words sound different. And if you record them saying those two words and play the recording back, they'll be able to tell you which is which. And so that means they have a minimal pair, pretty basic. Whereas somebody who has them merged and just says caught and caught for both, then they're going to say they sound the same. Right? And if you get them to say both words and if you play it back for them, they're not going to be able to tell you which is which, right? Because they're homophones for that speaker. So that's pretty simple. However, sometimes this actually doesn't work. That's the interesting thing that's been discovered. That's what we call near mergers. So what a near merger is, it's when a speaker produces a consistent but small difference between two sets of words. Okay, so they pronounce the two words differently, but it's a really small difference, and it's so small that the speaker themselves can't hear the difference, and they would typically insist that there actually isn't a difference. Okay? So they have this small contrast that is there, that they consistently produce, but they don't actually know they have it, and they can't hear it, and they think it's not there in their speech. So that's what we call a near merger. It's like they've been almost completely merged to the extent that the speaker thinks they've been merged, but they haven't actually phonetically been merged. So an example from the literature, Dan, a high school student from Albuquerque, he had a near merger between the vowel of pool and the vowel of pull. So standard oo versus right, tense versus lax. So in the speech of some people in his community, those vowels have been merged, and in his speech, they've been near merged. Right? So they did an acoustic analysis on his speech, and they found that he made a small but consistent difference between the two vowels. So he did pronounce pool and pull differently. Consistently, there was a difference there in how they were pronounced. But when he listened to recordings of his speech, he couldn't tell them apart, and he thought they sounded the same. Right? So he thought they were homophones, even though actually he pronounced them differently. Okay? So there's a bit of a puzzle here, right? This kind of shakes our confidence in the whole idea of mergers. Right? So, well, one problem is when we have evidence of mergers happening in the past, do we know if they were really mergers or maybe they were near mergers? Right? And if that was the case, they could have spread differently, they could have different implications for the sound system. Another puzzle is just how do near mergers happen? Right? How is it possible for a speaker to maintain a consistent difference in pronunciation when they consistently fail to actually be aware that they have a distinction? Right? So how can you have distinctions? How can you have phonemes that you don't even know you have? So near mergers are obviously important for our understanding of merger. They're also considered to be pretty important for broader issues in phonology too, because they shake some pretty basic concepts that are considered central to phonology.